Hello and welcome to the live stream. Let me check that everything is working. I think, oh, it's frozen. Why does it do this? Okay, folks, I do not understand this. It's fine. It is fine. And then as soon as I want to go live, it's working. And then it just stops. That's just typical. Oh, okay. Talk amongst yourselves. I do wish to remove it. Let me add it back in. I have to do this every time. And I get on early, I check it all, it's working. And then it disappears. Here it is. Okay, I'm here. Woo! Look, I'll even put myself to full screen. And put the logo in front. There we go. Wow. Well, I'm here after that really professional start. You've got to love tech. I check it every time. It works perfectly. Right up until I go live, and then it just stops every single time. Anyway, I can see a lot of excitement, from Norm at least, about sewers and Digger. Yeah. As Timber says, at least the sound is good this time, no echoes. So that's good. I can't believe it does it, but Digger's already reminding people to hit the like button. So if you're one of the 24 concurrent viewers who are here from the start, then please go on and hit like, subscribe. Now, a couple of, I don't know, housekeeping notices. I don't want to be that formal. I need to thank my moderators. So that's Norm, Digger and Timber, who turn up every time, even though they generally model railways, and I don't do that many railways anymore, but they still turn up and help by keeping you all in line. So if you get out of line, they're the people that will be shutting you down. I also want to thank Herbie, right at the top. Herbie joined the channel as a ground cover member, which means he gets access to weekly videos, which I do, which are often me talking about items or just me talking if I've been really busy. And they're there for patrons if you prefer to go through Patreon, or channel members if you want to go through YouTube. And that's probably the end of the housekeeping. So what are we talking about this time? Well, I can't believe a month has passed since the last one. This time last month, I was busy, with family stuff. I'm still doing a lot of family stuff, don't get me wrong. My mum had a new knee on the 4th of January. It's only 5 weeks ago. She's still, as you'd expect, taking a while to get better. So there's a lot of hospital visits. I've been to hospital, mum's been to hospital, my dad's been up and he's got a bad back. It just was like everybody seemed to be ill. It just was one of those things. But we've made it through the month, and I have also been busy painting. So we actually have some real models this month as well as last month. I feel like I'm spoiling you, but that is what a live stream should be about. Now, I will do a quick 10-15 minute summary YouTube video of the techniques when I finish them. The bad news for the live stream is I haven't actually finished painting all the models, and I did like half an hour today, which hasn't made it onto video. I did maybe a bit yesterday, which didn't make it afternoon, which didn't make it onto video. So, the end of it will be on that 10-minute video that will come out at the end of this week. I just need to finish painting all the models and get the beauty shots. And let's just look at chat, because I can see, hello, at Kathy Millett from Grandpa Rails. Hi, Grandpa. Loads of people. So Norm says, did you 3D print your mum's knee? No. I believe it's metal. I don't know what kind of metal. And I don't have a metal 3D printer. I'm not sure I'd be sterile enough anyway. And I'm not sure you'd want to put your trust in your knee on one of my 3D print designs. But there we go. Did anyone else sneak in saying hello? So loads of people saying hello to Grandpa. Ravens Express has arrived. Hello, welcome. And Timber thinks it's probably titanium in the knee. I presumed it was some kind of alloy as a bit of a mix, but there we go. Titanium or stainless steel, says Digger. I don't know, but her scar's already looking really good, and that's all I'm going to talk about medical, because I know it puts some people off. And she's doing well, but she was full of the joys of spring on Monday, did too much, that was last week, and then ended up feeling quite rough the next day, and then fell down a step, pulled a muscle. So she's had a bad week. So let's hope that this week is better than last week. And I wanted to also just ask Norm how he is, because last month, he didn't make it and all the wildfires were on and I had visions of Norm's house going up in flames. He assures me that it was just the power was out, but I was a bit worried about him. So it's really good to see him back this time. And we've got Ed Scar. Titanium is the most common metal for implants due to how it can be made in various shapes and how it remains stable inside the body. Yep. So yeah, and Digger's like keeping still for a while. So Tim Bell says knee replacement implants are made from metal alloys such as titanium or cobalt, chromium and plastic. The choice of materials depends on the patient. I don't know that it depended on Mum. She just had whatever the surgeon put in. But he said it was metal. He didn't say what type of metal. And to be fair, I didn't really ask. And I was the person that asked all the questions at those. I was kind of her memory. Oh, and Norm says thanks for the concern. Thanks, Norm. I did miss you. I was kind of worried. And then you took another 2 or 3 days to get back to me and I was getting more worried. But then he said it was fine. So that was good. So, I realise I have an annoying habit of saying so when I come to edit my video. So I'm really sorry about saying so in all the time. It's a bit like a Canadian A or some of these other, mannerisms that creep in. So I'm trying. I'm trying to avoid saying so as much. Yeah. So Tim says she is like me, bionic. She could have done with a little bit of extra oomph in there to push her forward out of the chair and stuff. So it is bionic. Thankfully, the other knee doesn't need doing in a hurry. So that's good. And Digger says, yeah, the Beverly Hills were well protected by the firefighters. So Norm was okay. It's good to know because I knew he was in California, but I wasn't quite sure where. And to be honest, I've been to LA. I went down Hollywood Boulevard and I missed seeing the sign. I'm that good at geography. So, yeah, that's cool. What have I been up to, without saying the word so, since last time? I've been doing the Sewer District. The Sewer District is my next Kickstarter. Someone said it's not a very exciting title, but it does what it says on the tin. It's the sewer part. And I am partly inspired by Junk Room City, which has actually been renamed, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I wanted to do something at the bottom, and it was full of grunge and slime. So I ended up doing sewers, and I've got sewers, scrap, which is rubbish, rubbish tunnels. They're conveyor belts with rubbish going along, rubbish piles, rubbish heaps, the kind of stuff detritus that might end up down there. And then there are vents, like air vents, which I really should show a bit more. They haven't been painted yet, so they haven't had their big showings really. But they clip together and they're flexible. So you can put them into different shapes. I've got one that's a huge curve. So I need to get those painted tomorrow. So what I've got to do tomorrow is paint up some of these. My scavengers, which are basically Jawas. I've got 3 poses from previous Kickstarter in that. A new pose where he's reaching for something. My space rats, and I've got to then paint up. I think that's it. But they're airbrushing. What I didn't do was print any of the tops because these are all sewers. So after all this is finished, I need to go through and do all this painting again for all the lids. So I'm not looking forward to that. And remembering which products I used. Yeah, okay. So what does chat say? Lots of sewing in that sentence. There was. Ed Scar. I'm also invented fairly minor for me as far as attaching metal to a skeleton goes. Well, I think a lot of people probably have bits of metal in plates and things, so not unusual. But I think the older you get, the more likely you are to have it, especially when you talk to anybody older and they've all had their knees done. Norm says he's closer to Palm Springs in LA. That's good to know. And I do know where Palm Springs is. I've driven past it on a motorway or a freeway or a highway or whatever it's called. Yeah, Tim, life of setting off security detectors beckons. I think at 81 her flying days are over, to be honest. Getting insurance for it is nigh on impossible, and I don't think she's that bothered. If we're going to go abroad, it'll be on a cruise or something, especially if she's paying for that, because I can't afford one. But we've never really gone abroad as a family because we had a canal boat when we were younger. So all my holidays are in the UK. And I said so again. Anyway. Oh, hi. Ben from Second Dynasty has arrived. Probably wants to know how to paint grunge. Ben has a Kickstarter going live I think it's the week after mine. So my Kickstarter, just a little advert, pin is at the top of the chat. If you want to go and sign up. I've got 67 pre-sign-ups. I really would like to get over 100 and it hasn't moved in 2 or 3 days. Please, 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 please go and sign up on the pre-launch and preferably buy it afterwards as well. But let's just get a little bit of momentum going on it. It's got a week and a day before it goes live. My last Kickstarter didn't do that well. It was my lowest so far. And I know that everyone's saying January, February has been really poor. I think there's a lot of people economically worried in America, which is my biggest market. And it's the January, February post-Christmas slump. And whilst this will be live into March, I want it to finish in my financial year, which ends at the end of March. So I have to go live next Tuesday to get it in time, if you go on a Tuesday. So there we go. That's my my Kickstarter. Ben has got his on BackerKit, and it's the Nidhogg, which he pronounces completely differently because he's in Sweden, even if he isn't Swedish. He's pronounces completely differently, and it's the Aesir fleet as well, AESIR fleet, and that's on BackerKit, which he's trying for the first time. And he's got something like 500 pre-sign-ups, and it's going to be really good, and it's massive spaceships, like massive. But you take them off a layer at a time and play with them, so they're playable spaceships. And if you haven't seen any of Second Dynasty's work, you have missed out. He does absolutely beautiful designs. And I've painted quite a few of them for YouTube, so you may have seen them there. Things like the Alpha Shuttle or my Transport Delta, all Ben's designs. And he's been a huge inspiration and support for me. So go give Ben the backing, please. Tim says in chat, my mother is 84 and still flying. It's the only way we can see my brother and his family. We've never flown much anyway. I think the last time Mum flew was with me to the US in 2009. So it's been a while anyway. BackerKit, says Ben. Second Dynasty, reminding me. Yes, it is. Rob, hi Rob. Hello Kathy, hope you're well, your mum gets well soon, love your videos, nice to see you on again. Thank you Rob. Oh, thank you. Edgar, your so thing reminds me of when I started editing my own videos. I realised that I very commonly start in the middle of a sentence and run on quickly into the next and then pause in the middle of... I'm the same, and sometimes I've started before it starts actually recording. So you start mid-sentence and you're like, I can't go back and redo that sentence. Occasionally I put something over the front of it and then just say the sentence again and then go to me, especially if I'm opening, because then I can put like a little trailer on the front thing. But yes, it is difficult. And I realise how quickly I run sentences on, especially if I'm like, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing. And then it just tails off. And then when I'm trying to edit it, it's really hard. Ben says, that's Second Dynasty. Bracket Second Dynasty, in case you're not quite sure. Put the pics up on the sign-up page. It will blow people away. Oh, you have put the pics up on the Yes, it will. It is a really cool ship. I'm looking forward to it. Ed Scar says, the next sentence making it hard to edit. Really. Morning, Monique. Monsville from Brisbane has in a chat. Ben also says, Nidhogg is fine. Nidhogg. It's working on a stretch goal now for the Ratatosk. I was on the live stream that Ben does on a Friday lunchtime. So if you want a 2 o'clock UK time live stream where he sits and goes through while he's working, it's good to see him work. They're Expanse style tail sitters. And I should be thanking you for the plug, because on Ben's last mailing he put out about my sewer district, so that's cool. Mutual plugging. Second Dynasty, no, I mean for the sewers, we're here for you. Yeah, we're definitely. Right, Edgar, I practiced by tapping my fingers whenever there was a full stop in my script. It's changed the way I talk, not only in read scripts, but in conversation as well. That's good to know. I probably should do something like that, as long as I'm not making a noise on. Yeah, I think that might come through on the... I can see that, yeah. But it must tap more quietly. The pics of your sewer, they're beautiful. Thank you, Doug. And I'm going to actually put the video of how I made it to play now, which might involve me freezing again, because it often does. And that's the frozen me. Let me delete. Yes. Add another me on, because this is so much fun every time it does this. We're on iOS camera 6 now, because it does it every time. There we go. Oh, I'm a little big. Right, that looks like a good spot, but at least I'm moving. I designed these. I 3D printed them on my Bamboo P1S in matte grey filament, and I'm in love with matte grey filament. It isn't the best printer. It doesn't print very well, but it is beautiful. And I'm going to show you this rat in close up at some point. This is an FDM rat. The quality on it, I'll do it again when I'm big. The quality on it is amazing. It's as good as my resin almost. I'll see what it's like when it's primed, because obviously priming in resin and priming in FDM will show up, whereas the matte just kind of masks the light issues you get with the layer lines. But I printed it at 0.08. It doesn't bridge for taffy. It's awful. It's just like, doesn't bridge at all. So clip holes are sometimes a problem. So it means my designs have many fewer sort of overhangs than they used to. And I've got a little reverberation problem I'm still fixing. But other than that, it's beautiful. I love it. It's great. I did the rubbish ones in brown. So this is me priming some of the grey. And what I'm trying to do, that was me putting out pillowing actually. What I'm trying to do is put the primer on in a way that there's a slight prime coat. And actually for the brown, I didn't even bother priming. I was painting with enamels. They're very sticky, and yeah, it was fine. I also, with the amount of soft I'm on, would have gone straight over anything underneath. So this is just me priming with lacquer paints, because I always spray with lacquers. They're just easier to spray with, but very manky for your lungs. So you have to have a proper mask, organics mask. And I'm spraying on streaks, as you can see. I have not gone overboard on priming, as I said, because it doesn't really matter if it's primed or not. If you're putting enamels on, they just stick well enough. Now, I don't think the inside of these are going to get a huge amount of play with me, but if you are a seasoned terrain player, by the time you've put a bit of something solid on the outside, like a good solid spray matte varnish, I think this will be tough enough. They're the inside. It's not like they're the outside of the piece. So anyway, you could prime it more heavily if you wished. Your mileage may vary. I'm got quite a lot of them. That was all the white done. And when I'd done all the white, I went on to do a lightened brown primer. Now these are all Mr. Colour primers. They have black, pink, white, brown and grey. I didn't bother painting anything grey, but this is a light brown going on just in case I had any gaps in my grunge, which comes later. So let's see where we got to in chat while that's going. Oh, right. Second Incy says, as in, put the photos on the sign-up page before you do the next social media push. The new Kickstarter page allowing additional information can really help create some interest. That's true. I want to get this last stuff painted tomorrow and do the photos probably tomorrow afternoon or Tuesday morning. And Tuesday is my social media day when I put everything together. So that's when my next mail is going out, and it will be a full set of things on that. And then on the Friday, Saturday, my video will be going out showing how I painted all this, the short form of all of this hour and a half that you're going to get, which is slightly sped up. Now, if you're observant, you'll notice these are the main sewers, and there's two exteriors, a weathered one, which has a pattern on it, and that also has a weathered interior. And you can just see the mottling on it. Personally, if I was going to print just one, I would print that one. And the reason for that is you get the really best grunge textures where there's a bit of texture on, and it gets rid of the layer lines a lot more. So once I got primer on these, I literally am trying to use up all these old products. These have all been sat on my shelf, some of them probably for 10 years. Now, I got out my Tamiya paints later on. They were all perfect after 10 years. I got some of these out and they were solid. I had 3 lots of rust streaks, which I used quite a bit in this for the brown tones. And of the 3 bottles I had, one had gone like chewing gum with very smelly white spirit on top. One had dried out completely and couldn't be reconstituted. And I haven't turned the iOS camera off, have I? On that, there we go. And one had been just completely and utterly kind of fine. And they're all, I don't know when I bought them. I don't know which is the oldest, but it's really frustrating when you have these products. I've got loads of damp earths and things like that that I bought and I just never used. It's embarrassing. Some of them haven't even been opened and they've still gone off. This was a bit heavy at the start. I did get lighter as I went through. I started to sort of slosh a lot more white spirit on. So it's an enamel streaking grime, so it's a bit thicker than a wash, and I'm using white spirit in that glass dish. It's a goo chocolate mousse dish, so it's white spirit, and I've sloshed it on. It got sloshier and sloshier as I went on, because there must be like 100 of these. I've got a 6 to 8 foot length full of them, and by the end I was getting quite blasé. And what I found was actually where I've sploshed it on, it's been really good. It's created little channels and streaks, and it's taken on a life of its own. So I really, really do recommend putting on these streaks, using it. And because there's a texture on these ones, it runs through that texture. And that's actually in the 3D print file. It's a very big file. When you come to put it in your printer, it will complain. And you can see where I've put the enamel on, you can already see there's some clearer bits coming through. Now partly this is a very tatty brush, and it's a weathering brush, so it's actually a saw brush. It's got a zigzag on the top, so it doesn't put it on as a smooth streak. It already puts it on as a streak with lines in. But by the time you've sloshed, in this case I actually did 3 different colours. I had dark streaking grime, no, I had normal streaking grime, winter streaking grime, and rust streaks on. And by the time I'd put all of those on and put loads of this odourless thinners, which is effectively white spirit, I was really excited how it came out. It came out okay on the smooth ones, so the Scifi ones, the ones that have got boxes on the outside and look smoother, as opposed to the ones that are more weathered. They came out okay, but you don't get the eroded, trickling look quite as much. So Second Dynasty says, if you have live streams or whip videos, put them on there too. I will actually put up the video as it goes out. I hadn't thought about putting the live stream on, but I could do that, couldn't I? Yeah, okay. Ed Scar says, for me, I wanted to tap to be audible so I can see it in the waveform and edit around it. It makes it a little quicker to edit. Yeah, I just, for my Patreon videos, I just talk for 10 minutes without editing what I talk about. For voiceover, I do also waffle a lot and then edit it shorter. Norm says 100. I don't know if it is 100, but I've got all the lids to do still, so it's actually going to be more. Though I probably don't need all of the bases. I'm currently printing lids, and I've got to remember what I did here and do it for the lids, but probably with less streaking for the lids, and it won't be any streaking in the middle of it. Edgar, haha. A goo pot, yes. I have a lot of the old Nutella glasses, which are great for mixing the texture paste I use as mud. My only complaint about the goo is there's a little dip around the outside where it kind of goes in. So I use one to clean my airbrush, and the little bits get lost into it. It just gets stuck there. Monique says, Games Workshop paints are terrible like that, going gooey in time. Their snap closed lids are rubbish. To be honest, I think I've got one of their Martian Earth, which is a crackle paint one. I wouldn't touch Games Workshop because of the lids and because it just seems overpriced. And also, I didn't start in tabletop. So Games Workshop, I mean, I've been there, I've been to Nottingham, but I've never got into their way of painting. I don't like the exaggerated, I've put a skull on everything, you know, sort of style that they have. So I've never really got into their way of painting. Yeah, you can see sometimes I put too much paint on my brush, and then I just splodge it onto future pieces. So it gets more and more, and they get quite dark. Some of them are light and some are dark. When I do the final one, because this is going into Junk Room City, which I'll talk about in a minute when I run out of steam talking about grunge. When it goes into that, there's going to be a sewer level. There's actually 2 sewer levels. Digger says, I like the AK interactive enamels. They sometimes need a really vigorous mixing though. These should mostly be AK. I think there's a few MIGs, perhaps. I have had the AKs go off a lot. My first lot of slimy grimes, which I love, I didn't use them on this because technically sewers haven't got any daylight coming into them. Except near the entrance, and it may be eventually I put maybe a bit of green near the entrance just to mark that off, but there's no real light, so I wasn't expecting them to be too green, and I feel that the green that's in the streaking grimes is more than enough green for there. But slimy grime light and slimy grime dark, a dark green and a light green, sludge greens, and then my two favourite colours for streaking and making stuff look really good. But sometimes they won't mix. I had two of these. One had dried out completely. The other, every now and then you get a pot that goes like chewing gum and it just won't mix. It's just solid and like chewing gum. It's awful. Now this is crusted rust deposits, and I found it in my stash. They're all out on the side. I've been looking at them for years and never touched them. I never used any of these crusty rusts. This actually dries way too light. It caused me a problem because I thought, oh, it'll be good. And I'd used it elsewhere. This is actually out of order of my actual doing of it because I've collated it by what I'm doing. And this is the sewer section. And these crusted rust deposits are not as... there's three colours. One of them's a bit too red for me. It's a bit dark. I think I've got the medium and the light rust. And the medium's actually a better colour. This is the light, and it's too light. It comes out looking almost pale with this amount on. Ed Scar says, I have some really old GW paints from the 90s and they're fine. GW paints from 2015 all dried up. Those pots suck and the paints are average. Yeah, I've got my Tamiyas, and some of my Tamiyas are as old as this. And I know because I label the top, and I use a set of stickers on the first set I did. And I opened up a clear that has one of those original stickers on. Perfect. Bit of hot water to get it out. But you can see this is drying a bit too light. We'll come back and fix it. It took me 2 or 3 attempts to fix it, but I did eventually. Ben, this seems so relaxing watching a sped up playback and chatting. Do you know, when I know Ben models on stream. When I first did it and I was trying to do it, I can't remember who it was. It might have even been someone like Digger. Said to me, it may even been Luke from Geek Gaming, said to me, don't try and model and do a live stream. It's too much hard work. You're either modelling or you're doing a live stream and chatting. And it's really hard to keep up with chat whilst you're modelling. Because physical modelling, you're looking at it, you're looking down. Whereas chat, I'm looking up, I'm looking at the camera. So he said, record all of it and play it back. So this is what I always do. I record it so that I can spend time reading what's in chat and reacting to it and talking about what's there. But I can also get a lot more done. So what you'll see is I did Dagobah for a year or so, and it was a whole project, and it was hours upon hours of footage sped up. This is actually quite cut back. I've only probably got 4 or 5 hours of footage, but this is days and days of work. So what I did was I went over these because they were too light with a brown wash. And this is just a really light brown wash in the hope I could stain that rust down a bit. Now this is an oil wash, Starship Filth, and it actually smells a bit off really, so it doesn't last as well as enamels. I think it's the plastic that puts it off. And I was putting it onto this Scifi just to give a bit of detail. Where are we? Edgar, a lot of fungus grows without sunlight and often white, very pure white, where plants have chlorophyll. Yeah, it's spelt with a Y-L-L at the end, but I did do a botany degree, so, you know. So agree, yeah. I actually, I'll talk about it a bit more. One of my inspirations for Junk Room City, Rockgut Station, has a lot of fungus in there, and I was thinking of doing some, but it's a future, I didn't want to do it for this, I wanted to do it for a future sort of grungy area. The underbelly or something, which is going to be a bit gangy. So John Bracken is his dog's name, not him. I've been using a couple of old GW paints recently after just dropper bottles for a long time, and it seemed a lot more clumsy to use. I do like dropper bottles, but I stored them with the top down for quite a long time, and they've actually gunked up on the top, and so I end up pressing too much and it splurts out. You might see that later on in this when I get onto the monsters. Rob says, Kathy, if you're modelling a certain bridge or building, do you, if possible, go and see it, how it's weathered, to do the same in your model? I used to model American, so I rarely went to see what I actually modelled. I did for Port de Norwich, but it doesn't really exist anymore, a lot of it. But I did go there and took loads and loads of photos in sunshine, which seemed weird for Wales, I will admit. I was modelling a drizzly day. I definitely will look at reference photos. depending how accurate I want to be. One of the reasons I moved away from railroads to Sci-Fi was no one can tell me that the rivet's in the wrong place. You know, people can tell me, oh, it doesn't look very Star Wars, oh, it doesn't look very Expanse, but they can't tell me that it's wrong. And there's no geographic fixing of the market. You know, people the world over like Star Wars, whereas, you know, over in this country, there's a lot less US modelling, especially now UK models have caught up. Now, I did this Starship filth on here, and one of the downsides of a 3D print, when you're putting a wash on, which is dilute, which is, no, it looks it, but it is more dilute than the enamels I've been using, is it wicks along the layer lines and wicks away. It's not like putting a wash onto a ABS plastic injection mould where it sits in the wells and stays there. If I had put this onto a plastic injection, this same wash, it would have sat in all those cracks really beautifully. Here, it really paled out. And it isn't a strong wash, but it was enough that I just went back and did plan B on them. So I did this wash, let it dry, wasn't happy it was strong enough. Didn't look quite the colour. I'm still not totally happy, and I might dry brush them in the end a bit more, but I am running out of time. I'd like to get a couple of the first stretch goals done before I go live. So I'm working on those in evenings, but I need to get on with this, I think, is where I was. So Rob asked that question. So yes, I do if I can, but it's very rare that I do. Google Earth is good, Google Maps, and just I love researching stuff on the internet. So for me, it's all about research, which is a passion. Tim, I have some Humbrol tins that I inherited in the late 90s. I suspect some are 70s vintage, perhaps even earlier, and still okay. That's good. It depends how well people put the lid back on, in my experience, and how well they stir them as to how much is sludge at the bottom and how much has still got thinner on them. Hi Boxcar Jerry, good to have you with us. Ben says, lol, that's why you need a John or Albin. I definitely need a John or Albin. I need to earn enough money to have a John or Albin first, though. I'm not quite sure what you were responding to, but I definitely would like a John. In fact, he's really great. John did the render that's currently up on my sign up page. If you want to see that, that's going to get changed on Tuesday probably. If you want to go and see the render he did for me, go check it out. John works with Ben and he's really cool. He's very, very good, very engineering focused. I'm going to talk to him when I want to do the walls for Junkroom City later. So I went back. These are fresh pieces, and this is now, I think it's an earth enamel. I thinned it quite a bit and I sploshed it on. And it still isn't really bringing out the cracks, but it's giving it a darker look. I felt like they were too light, and I didn't really have a concrete colour sat around. I didn't want to buy anything new for this. And because I'd already used enamels, I felt I was in... What I found was putting acrylics over the enamels. I tried some liquid pigments and they just all balled on the surface. So once you've started down something, if you're in a rush, you need to allow the solvents to dry off. So if I'd started with acrylics, I could have carried on with acrylics. But because I'd started and already put washes on that were enamel that weren't quite dry, I did feel that I then needed to go and add on some more of the sort of enamel. I would have probably put oil paints and enamels over each other, no way, but somewhere in that kind of solvent. Now, I think these might have been out of order, actually, and when I edit it properly, that'll be fine. But you can see this is going on and it's creating a nice earthy effect that just, that's a bit strong, gives it a little bit more colour. It was looking a bit insipid, I think, before. Okay, so those people saying hello to Jerry. Right, where are we? Down chat, still more. No, your Mark 18 laser power relay has yellow rivets. It does. And you should see my Mark 19. It's got green rivets. Yeah, it's a thing. Norm, Kathy, you should only really print an alien version of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle mini fig as a salute to sewer dwellers. I thought about doing turtles, but frankly, I wanted to do a rat, so I ended up doing a rat instead of turtles. I know everyone wanted me to do turtles and everyone went on and on about it, and I probably should have done it, but I actually forgot when I was writing the brainstorm of what to do. It may be that a turtle alien goes as a stretch goal. I was looking for good stretch goals, so maybe a turtle alien. You've inspired me. If I remember in the morning, that will go on the stretch goal list. Because I need to do my stretch goal graphics in the next couple of days as well and get them up. So I need to decide what my stretch goals are to do the graphics at least for the first few. Ben says, fair points about the sci-fi. I think it too is important to work on something that most ignites your own passion and creativity. I can model other people's stuff, but I can work twice as hard on mine. I think it's really true. And I know Sewer District probably isn't the most exciting thing. It's a little bit more RPG than I've been doing more Legion, but Legion's not very strong at the moment. And I'd like to get into doing an RPG. I've been wanting to do it for a while. I tried Legion and I'm not competitive enough for Legion. You know, there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of trying to win. And frankly, I like winning, don't get me wrong. But I'm not competitive enough about it to actually want to play to beat people. It's not where I am in life. Whereas an RPG is narrative play, but I think it's quite hard to find them to do. So I've been trying to decide whether to do Edge of Empire or a D6, hence me asking Tamsin earlier. And I need to find a set of people. There's a D6 Discord which is looking for people to play, but a lot of the games seem to be paid now. And I don't actually earn enough money to pay to play. And I don't have any friends that play, apart from I think John used to do RPGs. So I could do play by post. And also a lot of them are in America, so all the voice ones are out. Someone on Darkfire was talking about doing a play-by-post, so I might try and see if I can find a play-by-post one. But I think starting it'd be nice to do a voice one. Anyway, I would like to get into a Star Wars RPG. I like video games better than I like tabletop game like Legion, so I'm hoping that I'm hoping that I can get an RPG game sorted. The bottom of my sewers. Careful note of not saying so there. The bottom of my sewers look a bit glossy. Now the sides you can see here, and you can see on that matte one, there's that lovely streak down. It's even on the Sci-Fi ones it's done it, even though it's a plain 3D print. As it hits the layers, it just deflects slightly and it streaks down and leaves a clear section, like there is water running regularly down. I really loved that effect, and it came out all the time in this. It's a beautiful effect. I wish I could say it knew it was going to do that, but it did it. And it's beautiful on the sides. Where it gets to the bottom and pools, it goes glossy, especially if you have a higher ratio of enamels, because the enamels themselves can dry quite glossy. And what I needed to do was go over them. I tried dry brushing it a bit. I wasn't really very happy with it. I tried liquid pigments. They sucked because it just repelled because it's still got too much enamel on. I was talking about not putting acrylics over enamels because of the solvents repelling each other. So I did this. It didn't really excite me, so I got out more odourless thinners. I bought another bottle and I splodged it on, and I used two colours. One is my Neutral Wash by MIG. That's the second bottle I think of it. I've still got my first bottle somewhere. I love it. It's my favourite colour. It's like a desaturated beigey grey, and I would use it on everything. And I put on a slightly more coloured one, and I literally just went through and sploshed it everywhere with loads more white spirit. It's still drying off. It's still quite shiny, but it's drying matter than the last lot that was on there, which was the rust streaks. I'm not sure why that is. It could be that the AK is a Kursk earth, and the earth are meant to dry matte. I thought the rust streaks would be. And I know the Neutral Wash by MIG always dries beautifully. So I think maybe it's just that it's two different products. So you can still see the dark brown coming through because there's plenty of white spirit diluting everything. I will say I am not wearing a mask, and I should have. But I have got a massive extractor fan just sat about here in front of me going. It's at the far side of my desk. And it's one of those surface ones that comes out of the desk, goes under the desk and out the side. It's getting rid of the water from the pigments which I'd washed off. They looked awful. And anyway, it sucks it out. So it does do a fairly good job, especially this time of year when my windows are shut. When it gets a bit lighter, they'll be on the crack all the time just to make sure it gets aired. But at the moment, they're not. So I went through and I basically did the bottom of all of these with the two colours, again, splodged on. Now, I would normally use a pigment or a something on here, tile grout perhaps, but they're water-based and these were still drying, so I haven't. I did go over the bottom of my scrap ones, which we'll see in a bit, with a dark track rust or something this morning to get rid of the shine that was on those. I could have done that with a pigment, but then I would need to seal the pigment, which would need, and I haven't sealed it on the rust one yet, which would need some kind of water-based sealer probably. And when I put that water-based sealer on, I'm not prepared to yet because I don't think these are dry enough from this. I might give it another 2 or 3 weeks, and if they're still looking shiny at all, I may put some pigment on just for a bit of variety. But if ever you do get shine, pigment is your friend as well when you're doing enamels, because pigment will stick to the not quite off and sort of stick itself on quite nicely. I had a set of oil paints I did, oil washes, and I hadn't really strained the oil off the oil paint enough, I think, and I was using terps rather than odorless thinners, which I used for both of them. And it was really tacky, and the pigments worked beautifully for detacking it, and they stuck really well to it, which can be a problem if you're doing a smooth surface like I was. Right, let's have a look. Doug, nothing is better than the experts on the internet to tell you when you've made a mistake. That's very true. And they do love to tell you. I actually did have someone write to me once and tell me the sky was blue. He did go on to say, and clouds get smaller towards the horizon. It's like, really? Thank you for writing to tell me that. But so don't underestimate what people are willing to tell you. I think it makes people feel good about themselves that they know more than you, especially as you've put yourself forward in some way by being on the internet. So I try and take them, and I always thank people for tips, because even if they're stating the obvious to me, they're not necessarily stating the obvious to other people. Though I would hope most people know that the sky is blue. But, you know, they might be colourblind. Jaw21 says, and a Splinter with a few pizza boxes. That is true. Splinter's the rat, isn't it? Have a rat. I actually have 4 rats that aren't cured yet, which I should have cured and brought in. They are washed. They're just drying from their second wash. But I wanted to show you the FDM one. They're not painted yet, so they will be on the next video. Probably not my next live stream, but the next video, because the next live stream will be on to the next thing. All right, let's have a look. Nothing is better than the experts. Draw 21. Doug Jeffries, don't look at the render. It's not as good as the actual pictures. John agrees. That is what John said. I vouch for that. There we go. But you have to do the renders when you start this, because you don't have anything else. This is a speed paint, and this is speed paint medium, and this is malignant green. Now I have the water texture modelled in. It's printed quite well because it's 0.08 layer heights, and I'd put on that winter streaking grime, I think, as a wash. It's the slightly darker one as opposed to the streaking grime, and I am putting malignant green all over it. It's a speed paint, so it'll dry nice and shiny and slightly translucent, which is why I used it. I also didn't have any grungy colours like this in my Vallejo range, but it will allow that to show through. I actually don't like the pattern in a couple of places. I was a bit too gung-ho with it, and I should have let it settle a bit more. I feel like I can still see the brush marks. But these are all going to be like looked at from the side in reality when I'm doing them, when they're finally installed, because you'll be looking down tunnels at them. So it probably won't show up too much, I don't think. So the first coat is the speed paint, let that dry overnight, and then I use Tamiya clear gloss varnish. Now I've got to admit, if you want a gloss varnish for water, you cannot beat Tamiya. It has a body to it that acrylic varnishes don't, and it's an acrylic lacquer. It's just beautiful. It thins with water, even though it can also thin with lacquer thinners. And I had a bottle that was as old as the enamels, and it was still great. I used half a bottle on it, doing all of these, and there's a little bit left. And I probably will go and add maybe some puddles into some other places with it. It's a really great product. It is a beautiful gloss. So anytime you want to do water and you want to gloss varnish it, I cannot recommend anything other than Tamiya gloss varnish. It's just the best. Right, where am I? Let's get through some chat. Doug says, Kathy shared the pictures on the Second Dynasty Discord. They are amazing. Thank you, Doug. Polite says, I also love researching online, but I hate it when more new questions arise that can no longer be answered externally. Very true. Very true. Ooh, Norm retracted a message. I wasn't quick enough. Norm says, as a stretch goal, that would be cool. I think it is, and thank you for that. I actually really enjoyed making the rat. I was really pleased. This is my first animal that I've really made. I've done a few aliens. I think he came out really well. I did struggle a bit with posing. If you can't see, he's actually got 6 legs. 1, 2, 3. Weird alien ears and 6 eyes. 6 eyes, which you'll notice a bit more when it's painted. He's going to be a dark brown come black with white streaks at the top on the back as like a crest going down when I paint him tomorrow. And I've got to say, I was surprised. The only problem I've had is I can't, only one of them is FDM printable, and it's the resting one. So I've got one that's FDM printable. The rest are resin supported, and Craig supports for me. He's a professional supporter who does it for Darkfire. And I printed there's one standing on 4 legs, which stands up fine. He's got 2 legs in the air, 4 on the ground, and one standing on 2 legs with 4 legs in the air, and he just face plants down. And he actually doesn't look too bad face planted down. He's walking on tiptoes. He doesn't look too bad, but he needs a bit of wodge of blue tack under him, I think, to sit him up. And actually, if you're playing games, then he is about to attack you, and if you try and get near him, he will fall over and attack you. Someone said it's not very scary. They have got big teeth when you see them. So let's hope I don't knock any of those off. So Timber says the last RPG game I played was Halo. I didn't know Halo had an RPG, but I've got Flashpoint. Again, I haven't really got anyone to play it with. None of my friends really play. So John says, I've tried doing an RPG game via email before, but it didn't work well as the pace was glacial. I think people generally use a Discord. I don't know, that talking about doing play-by-post, PvP, so I'll have a see about it. Second Genesis, Saga was a good system for Star Wars, but I would not go back to it. The classes are excellent, but the bonuses were like 3 times and too crunchy for a middle-aged gamer. Aha. Well, there are, I think, 3 or 4 main options. There's the original D6 role-playing game, which now has a revised version called RE Re-Up, which is revised, expanded, upgraded or something. This is my next attempt, and trying to make these look slightly. I've obviously got the order wrong. The light rush should have been in this section. This is my next attempt at trying to get these to look a bit less light. If you look at them, they just look too splotchy. And this is just putting a dark rust, a red rust, over the top as a wash. So I've thinned down an enamel with some odorless spirits, and I'm just putting it on, hoping it will stain everything to a warmer set of colours. And I'm just splodging it on, as always. This is very splodgy, this paint job. It's all in having the enamels as the products. You couldn't do this with acrylics in the same way. Right. Doug says, maybe I should dust off Roll20 and work on another game. I like WEG for Star Wars. So I've got an Edge of Empire. I've got a beginner's game and the core rulebook to look at. And a lot of people online seem to either go split between the original D6 role-playing game or Edge of Empire, which is the newest one. But nobody really seems to talk about Saga or WEG or Wizards of the Coast as much. Which are the D20 ones, I think. Anyway, I'm still trying to work out. I bought myself some dice, though, so I've got dice. Yeah, I was throwing loads earlier, doing a sort of Star Wars RPG beginner game that's on there, swrpggm.com. Right, Ravenson Express. At the moment, my first own 3D model is printing on a new FDM printer. I hope it went well. First print after printing the Benchy. Oh, brilliant. Put it on Discord afterwards. Matt was putting it on there earlier that he'd just got this new printer. But it is the start of a downhill slope of project. You can see that is drying a bit darker. I still think they're a bit light, but they'll get there eventually. Tamsin, I'm guessing we'll see later, but are the sewers dry or wet? So there are 3 types of sewers. There is the water one, which has the malignant green, which is glossy. There is the dirt one, which at the moment is dry. It's drying. It was shiny and is now matting up over the next couple of days. So probably by the time I do the video tomorrow afternoon and Tuesday, it will probably be more or less dry. And then there's a plain one, which is like this. Now, if I had more time and it was for diorama, and I wasn't doing 100 of them, I might consider adding some water effects in, but I really don't want to go beyond paint effects at the moment and show off what's modelled there. So I might add some water in later, but probably because I've modelled a water one, I probably won't. So the answer is you could have either. You can have the water one, which just has a flat bottom with ripples on it, or you can have, I tried putting dirt in it, but it just looked weird. Or you can have the dirt one and put in your own puddles into there, if that's what you want. So now I also put on, this is broadsword silver, speed paint, just to show on a couple of these edges where it's been cut through that's a bit shinier. These have been either acid edged if you're into aliens, or cut through with some kind of really manky cutting device, maybe even a lightsaber if you're in Star Wars. Rosen Express. At the moment, everything's fine with the print, but I'm taking a look from time to time so I can stop when the flying spaghetti monster appears. Just be hopeful. Mine actually stopped last night, just stopped. My P1S just wasn't happy and stopped. There we go. Mid-print. Tamsin, posted comment before the wet sewers appeared. Thank you, Tamsin. Yeah, okay, so these are my monsters. I don't think they look scary enough. I'm really sorry. I had a vision that I wanted them to be green and purple. And they are green and purple by the end, trust me. But they don't look particularly scary. Maybe if you're RPG size creature, you might find them. So I started off with a speed paint. It didn't excite me. I highlighted it with I dry brushed then some other colours on. What I like to do is sometimes dry brush speed paints because they're translucent. So you can catch the tops. So you'll see I do it with speed paints, and I've used normal paints as well on these. Ravenson Express, at the moment everything's fine. Okay, so I've done that one. Right, sewers. That looks very mossy, says Norm. It does, yes. It's sludge, not moss. Yes, the trouble with moss is there isn't enough light for it in these. They're at the bottom of the city and there's not much light. So it's definitely sludgy. It's malignant, as they say. Digger, yeah, we don't need to know what's exact content, Norm. I was reading Rockgut Station's adventure journal. He's in one of the adventure journals on that site that I linked, D6 Holocron. A lot of the stuff on there is open source, Tamsin. So I think it was just those Adventure Challenge magazines that had gone over. But this was one of the adventure journals or something. And I don't know whether they're open or not. But he actually had Rockgut Station from 2018 up on there. And I love Rockgut Station. It's Empire Toy Works on Instagram. I follow them on. And I absolutely adore it. It's one of the inspirations for my Junk Room City. He had this whole magazine about setting, it's a D6 role-playing game, I think, on it. And he had the Mongolian monks who discovered that the perfect food for them was the contents of their sewers. Anyway, he's created it. I follow him. It's basically a series of toys that he's linked with loads and loads of stuff. And people have written like choose your own adventures, I would have called them when I was younger. But I guess they're solo RPG games for it. There's like 5 or 6 chapters. There's some stories for it set there. There's stats and stuff. And I was really inspired by that. Now, I've probably mentioned Empire Toy Works before as an inspiration for Junk Room City. So I decided that I needed to do some work on Junk Room City to give it a setting. I want it to be in Star Wars, but not just Star Wars. I want it to be universe agnostic. So I talk about the Outer Rim, but I don't set it anywhere particularly obvious. It's in the Severna system because that's what I'm modelling. You know, Severna Spaceport, Severna Prime. But it's actually been moved to a moon. So it's an entire city moon. And I put up on Discord that I wanted some names. And I ended up with Scut City, spelt it with a K in the end, Scut City, Scutage, apparently is taxing, Scut City. And Shergel, I think it was, suggested that Rau, R-A-U-H, which I think is rough in German, Rau Skutter for the moon. So the moon is Rau Skutter, and everybody calls it Scut City because it's just a city now. So the entire sort of moon is 5,000 levels of city, effectively. Right, so I'm going over this now with an opaque-ish Vallejo. It's kind of like a peachy colour. And the reason is I wanted to put a lighter colour on those ends, the areas that I'm doing this for. And if I don't put something lighter on there that's opaque, it's just not going to show properly. Right. Raverson, oh, I watched the Halo 4 film some days before, but never played the game. But it seems to be interesting. What was the Halo 4 film? Was that Forward Unto Dawn? I loved that film. I've actually got the soundtrack for Halo playing quite a bit. I've got 590 songs. I think I have almost every soundtrack of Halo ever done. And it plays for hours upon hours upon hours. And it's in the car. I think I've got Titanfall on at home at the moment in the house. But I had Halo on for a couple of weeks. I always do soundtracks because they don't disturb me as much as normal music. It really, really love it. And Halo 4 has my favourite soundtrack. And I like the soundtrack from that Forward Into Dawn. Where did your gloves go, says Norm. Yeah, I should have put gloves on for this. I put them on when airbrushing. I didn't put them on because I was here for days doing this. I didn't put them upstairs, so I did end up with hand cream instead afterwards. Doug, I'm running a West End Games WEG Original D6 and playing in an Edge of Empire. They both have merits. That's good to hear, Doug, because I think I hear that from a lot of people. And they say Edge of Empire is more narrative, perhaps. Ben says I think Swizzy Saga was my favourite organised play campaign. Dawn of Defiance. But my passion for Star Wars has waned in recent years for some reason. Cough, Disney. This is going to sound really sad, but Halo Flashpoint came out, and I was going to do a Halo Flashpoint forward operating base. And Darkfire did something, and they said it was more dry brushing, again in opaque paint, and they said it was a Flashpoint scale, and they got asked to cease and desist. A very nice letter, but they had to pull a couple of months' worth of work from their shop and Patreon. Because, and it wasn't even things that were the same, it was ODSTs, which I don't think are out yet, but are probably planned by the Flashpoint creators, Mantic. And I think what caught them unawares was people who dabble in the Star Wars arena for IP never seem to get cease and desists in the 3D printing world. They don't seem to get it in the cosplay world. I know they lost a major cosplay court case in the UK, so I'm not sure they'd ever come after a UK creator because they lost a $20 million court case. They won it in the US, they lost it in the UK, and the guy had the right to carry on selling his Stormtrooper helmets from the original cast. So I think Disney has been careful about suing people, and they actually have always encouraged almost the cosplay community, and I know they rely on 501st to do some of their parades and things. That being said, you get used to playing in a sandbox where the creators don't come after you if you say it's Star Wars, but people still don't say it's Star Wars. But I've seen creators out there call it the actual thing everywhere except on maybe the Kickstarter they're on. And I think Halo Flashpoint, suddenly everybody pulled out of going, oh, we better not do Halo Flashpoint if we're going to get cease and desist lessons. I don't think it was just them either. So it's interesting to see how people, the owners of these games, who very rightfully have the IP and are doing a game for it, go. Now, it used to be that the creators for the Legion space didn't do the things that are in the main game that much. They did the other options. But over the years, they've done all the main stuff as well, and Atomic Mass Games have never come after them. I think they've been very lucky in that. So I want to move away from being in an IP where I could get sued for doing something. And I felt my Galactic Racers was very close to the bone. It was too much of a copy. So these sewers are further away. They're not Star Wars inspired. They're just sewers. When I was looking at how to paint them, I looked at concrete walls in Earth, you know. How does a streaked concrete wall on Earth look? And I copied that. So I couldn't find a sci-fi Star Wars sewer to go look at. I did look at them, but they're mostly in animation, not real action. And as a result, the weathering is limited on them, and they actually look quite clean inside, which seemed a bit weird. And also the sewer that Ahsoka runs in on Coruscant had loads of plates, which seemed a bit like it was going to get covered in gunk. So I used real Earth thoughts about how these would be modelled and weathered, especially for the painting. But I'm going to do my own IP on Rauskutta, which has heavy influence from Star Wars, because I do love it. My favourite sci-fi influence is Titanfall. I love Titanfall, but I also loved Mass Effect. I like Halo. I want to take the best of all of those and create something that's my own style. And Ben was talking as a creator further up about wanting to create his own style stuff rather than do other people's. And I understand why Ben has moved away from Star Wars. I actually really like the animation in Star Wars best. I think the last 3 or 4 series, Skeleton Crew was excellent. The last 3 or 4 series, live action, haven't been that great. Ahsoka ruined the character. Acolyte was okay. It was just okay. It wasn't as bad as the hate campaign made it sound, but it was only okay. Skeleton Crew was really good, aimed at kids. I really enjoyed Young Jedi Adventures. I thought Tales of Empire was a bit lackluster. The last thing I really enjoyed, Bad Batch probably. That was really good. This is fluorescent paint. I don't think it will show through because I actually hoped it would be a bit lighter, but it dried too dark. So I went over it again with some pale. I mixed it in with a bit of the paler stuff that still sat on that bit of cardboard and went over and painted the spots again. I am not painting spots because I want the spots on there. I'm painting spots because I want it to look mottled when the next coat goes on. So think of this more as mottling than spots. Tamsin, just had a thought for an effect you could add to sewers. Minoc equivalent guano. Ooh. I might do that on the outside where they've stood on there and pooped. There we go. Do you know? So what's fascinating is I can actually read Doug's retracted or deleted message. No swearing. This is a PG rated chat, but it was vaguely funny. Second Dynasty, Ben. I've been there with the too close. Yeah, fortunately design language gets you far. But I have older designs I'm not proud of that feel too on the line for Macross and Yamato. I think the thing with Macross and Yamato aren't so well known in the West. Star Wars is. So yeah, I will do a racing again, but it'll be more based, say, off the Bad Batch ones that are racing through the city, and it will be something there. Also, I have watched an awful lot of sci-fi. I want to play Titanfall 2 again. If you haven't played it, it's an 8-hour campaign. Play it on easy, go through it, and I just love it. It's really cool. But I've got their 2 art books from Titanfall and Titanfall 2. So instead of doing a forward operating base for Halo, I wanted to do something that was in that military arena that could be used in Halo, as it's a new game and out there. So actually I started looking at doing a training ground, which is a series of very box-like structures that have been well peppered with shells and bullet holes and were vaguely concrete at some point and have barricades around the top. And I think it'd be really good for tabletop games like Legion or Halo Flashpoint or Shatterpoint even. But they are on a 3-inch cube, and they will take the walkways for Shatterpoint when I'm done. So I was just starting to look at doing something like that instead of a forward operating base. And I'll leave the forward operating base till the Halo arena has died down and I'm able to see whether it is a reasonable place to go into. There is actually a Kickstarter live at the moment, bless them. Tell Us War Games, whose Trailblazer I'm doing. I haven't seen him advertise it at all. And I don't know if they've pulled the advertising because they're worried about it. It's based on a Halo live fire from one of the multiplayer games, I think. And it's Vanguard Colony, I think it's called, and it's out there at the moment. And it's done like £300-400. And I think it's because they haven't really advertised it. And obviously people are very nervous about how litigious Halo is going to be now. So creators are perhaps pulling back a bit from it. I think for terrain, they provide terrain. I want something that will work across multiple and will fit within my own Rauskutta sort of narrative. So I'm going to start writing myself, and I started to write it, a history of it, a setting for it, where it is, why it is, There's a terraforming tax on the main planet, so everybody moved up to the moon for doing the transfers, bootlegging, and each level is going to have a guide. I was thinking of doing something like a choose your own adventure, which apparently turns out to be a role-playing game. When I was reading the opening start to the SWRPGGM, which is Star Wars role-playing game, gamesmaster.com, when I played their Get Started game, which is Cara Dune going to an escape pod, can I just say, you roll against things which you don't do in a choose your own adventure. You have dice, whereas on choose your own adventure, which I had as kids, you just go to the next section depending on your choice, but you have to roll dice. So I bought myself some little dice and I rolled my dice, and I think I managed to get a 5 on one roll. Everything else was 1, 2 or 3. Didn't see a 4, didn't see a 6. I rolled abysmally. Every time the other thing in it rolled, it got 5s and 6s. I was like, I went down the, if this is your third time for being shot and losing, go to this. And it went, I'm sorry, you died. It wasn't you died. It was like you spent a period of time blacked out and you had to go back to the base with a tail between your legs. And that was me. That was me. I was like, I've never rolled so badly in my life. So I might do something that's a bit like an RPG, but I don't understand them well enough yet, but with a bit, maybe some dice throws in. So I was getting quite excited about narratively telling something with my models, which I guess is the RPG space, which is why I wanted to play an RPG game, because I was very, very excited by it, seeing this Rockgut Station adventure journal magazine, and just realising that what's probably been missing from my models with just a series of bitty dioramas is the story that I need to hang a whole city together. So I'm starting to think about the story. Ben also says, after he talked about design language, I enjoy Skeleton Crew too, but I think you need to accept it is for kids. Yeah, you see, I liked Young Jedi Adventures, and that's aimed at like 8-year-olds. I have a very low bar to liking TV. I mean, they say the Clone Wars was aimed at kids, but generally it has quite a high atrocity rate, and it's very sad. And by the end, it's definitely aimed at adults. Or maybe they just expected the kids to grow up with it. But I enjoy Skeleton Crew. My only criticism is I'm watching a lot of UK. We've watched Vera and Shetland, which are detectives, because my parents have both been around over Christmas. My dad came to visit Mum and stayed to help with a knee. And as a result, we've all been watching intelligent UK programmes rather than the stuff I'd normally watch. And it's noticeable that they managed to do a full hour, and it's beautifully shot, it's a great plot, there's loads of cast. They managed to do a full hour, and yet none of the Disney Star Wars managed to get to an hour. They're all animation length of about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And I feel sometimes they could do with more episodic TV on these streaming channels. They're like a movie that they've just chopped into short bits, and it comes quite choppy because I watch them as they come out. I suspect Kenobi I preferred, or I liked it better when I watched it a second time rather than when it was all chopped up. And I suspect that Skeleton Crew and some of these other actually do a lot better when you watch them together. So normally I like this monster colour. Well, that's cool. It's going very purpley at the moment. Yeah. So this is a speed paint I'm painting over the top, and partly because it's saturated and I wanted a little bit more saturation in there, and it's translucent. So everything that I put underneath shows through, and I'm dry brushing it on quite thinly. It's not being sat on to sit there. So that was my monster. Not 100% happy with them, but they're done, and that is where I am at this point. So scrap. This is where the crusted rust deposits all come out. 3 or 4 different colours of them. They dry chalky. I wasn't expecting that when I put them on. I didn't know how they were going to dry, so it was a bit of a shock when it all dried. I am just using up old products, and I think I may have used these before, but I wasn't entirely sure. That might be a rust wash, and it's kind of gone off. You can see it's a bit bitty. Probably if I sat it with some white spirit in it for a while, it would work. But these ones, I don't even remember using them before. One of them's a bit red, and I ran out of the main rust colour I had, which was a dark brown rust. I ran out of it. I had three bottles of it, and I ran out of it. I think it was the rust streaks. Yeah, it was rust streaks. 2 of them were useless and went straight in the bin. The other was only half full. So I've got a couple of pieces that are in this reddy colour rather than in the brown, and they really stand out. But there we go. They are where they are. Monique says Duke Nukem had sewers, but the video quality was pretty poor back then. I don't remember Duke Nukem. Me too, Norm. It's a great shade, says Digger. Well, there we go. That's cool. Hi there, Bernard. Been listening in the corner. Just wanted to say what a stellar modeller you are, and a tip of the old hat to the lady. Thank you very much. I do appreciate the compliments. I like being complimented as a modeller. I just, that really makes my day because that's what I want to be known for. So thank you. And thank you for coming out the corner. I probably should say, don't forget to like, but actually I look at it and I've got 38 concurrent viewers and 37 likes. So thank you. Thank you for liking. So Ben, I think it's perfectly fair game to make something that feels like it fits into a particular universe, but not a one-for-one copy. And sometimes it's a fine line. It is. So when I come to Titanfall, I could more or less copy Titanfall because it's not a well-known game. It's actually a well-loved game. Almost everybody who's played it loves it. It's one of those that EA screwed on release. The first one didn't have a campaign, and people love it. People are still playing it. And when it goes on Steam and it's free, it's the most played game on Steam. It's just a really well-loved game. But design language-wise, it's not well-known. And those people, I mean, the head of their art now does Call of Duty, I think. Really love it. Anyway, the 2 art books are really good. And what I like about it is it's a cleaner sci-fi. It's sort of whites and oranges. And you'll see that coming through on my colour palettes quite often. Whereas Star Wars tends to be more greys. So they might do, patchy colours. Rarely orange, mostly red, blues, etc. on their ships. But they're greys. Right, so Bernard, hey there Norm, good to see you, and big howdy to Digger and Tamsin. Doug, some of the colours some of the choose your own adventures need 2d6. I remember the ones that were in red, choose your own adventure, and I never used dice as a child. I had about 6, 7 of them, and I really enjoyed them, but once you've played them a couple of times you don't necessarily want to go back. And I was looking at how to write a choose your own adventure, but then I started to look at this Rock Gut Station magazine, adventure journal, and realised that actually choose your own adventures have morphed into role-playing games in many ways with these. So maybe I need to look at solo RPG. And I think I've got 5 parsecs from home, either downloaded or a copy of it somewhere. And I started it and it looked really hard. So I do need to look into it a bit more. Bernard says, bingo that, Act 2, Second Dynasty, true story. John, my old GM used to roll dice like that, just with mostly high rolls. He could be a nightmare at times in war games. I bet. Some people just have luck. There we go. Norm, be careful, Kathy, you might become an author. Every now and then someone says, I read your book. And I'm like, oh, it's so exciting. In fact, I forgot to send them my bank details. Oh, I'm only an accountant, folks. When they asked for them back in May, because the form required something I didn't have in the UK. So when I hadn't got paid my royalties for the last half year, I sort of thought, oh, maybe I should have sent my bank details. So I looked it out. I'd put it on the do later pile of emails and just not done it later. And they were happy to, I couldn't send them what they wanted because basically US banks are really weird compared to UK banks. And the bank I use is like a clearinghouse in between, but it didn't have what they wanted. But they accepted it in the end. And I finally got my royalty through. So I finally just got paid for my last half year. And I don't think that I was actually any slower because Calmback, the books got sold to Firecrown. So Calmback Media is now Firecrown for those. And they're carrying it on. Still selling it, so you can still find my book there, and it's still under Model Railroad. It's just the back end, I guess, is different. So anyway, I finally got my mash, which was good. Ed Scar, I grew up with Animorphs, so many war crimes. Whew, yes. But I actually think this whole thing about war crimes, they go on about war crimes, and that wouldn't pass the Geneva Convention. And I think Star Wars is based on pre-World War II. And war crimes really are a concept that came out last century, World War One, World War Two. Up till that, the phrase was all's fair in love and war. And I think Star Wars is based on the all's fair in love and war type of scenario. They don't have a Geneva Convention. They're not in Geneva, you know. So I'm actually quite happy with them doing war crimes. It makes for better baddies. The goodies do them too, but I don't think false surrenders bother me as much as it appears to bother some other people. Doug, I grew up with the A-Team where everyone was firing assault rifles on full auto and no one died. I grew up in the A-Team. I love it when a plan comes together. That was so good. Norm says, oh, that's a great scrap pile. Thank you. There's actually two sizes, exactly the same scrap pile, but I presume you can turn it around. This scrap pile had everything in it. You can go through and spot my models, all mostly buried. And I spent ages trying to make it printable because I had all these manifold models shoved in there. They've all printed and been cleared. And then somehow it went unmanifold and it was massive. It's a really big file. In the end, I exported it as an STL. I joined them all together, exported it as an STL. And then I think I spent 4 or 5 days trying to make it manifold, and I would get it nearly right, and then it would start getting worse again. It was too big to go onto the system I use, which is Formware online, because that's 50 meg. So I did it in sections, and normally you can do things in sections, combine them, and they'll be fine. Maybe 1 or 2 things to fix. It just was not working. I ended up remeshing it, which worked really well. So I did a voxel remesh, 0.1, took like 10 minutes to calculate. I decimated it to 0.1, took like 15 minutes to calculate. Job done. I spent 5 days getting to that point. So yeah, sometimes. So I've actually started to use voxel remesh a lot more with problem things that are just not fixing and are too big to go onto Formware. And the sewer pipes are actually in that stage where I'm putting the tops on. I'm making LED tops with holes in, so I can put LED strip above it and light it when it's in my final. So you'll look down the tunnels into the distance with the lights, which are going to be quite patchy lights. So yeah, the idea is that, you know, these things should be manifold, but I think Blender puts things that are very close together sometimes, and it just doesn't work. These were trash crabs, but then I thought that's too close to the name that's just been on Skeleton Crew. And they were inspired by Skeleton Crew. They had trash crabs there. And so these are now scrap spiders, but they're actually modeled like crabs because they've got pincers. So they're called scrap spiders, but they're actually crabs, just to go there. But I was having they're going to be my own IP. So these spiders have pincers, because why not? They've also got 8 legs, whereas I suspect crabs may only have 6. Maybe they have 4. Anyway. And Polite also says, okay, where are we? Norm says, oh, that's a great scrap pile. Rob says, love 100% watching you work with that brush, Kathy. Oh, thank you. There's a lot of splodginess. I mean, I can't say how splodgy this is. I'm plastering it on at this point because there's so many to do. And I think actually when it comes to grunge, sometimes just look at the state of that palette. Just plastering it on works really well. You don't want to be too tidy. Polite says, cool pile of scraps and vibes from The Fifth Element. That's a movie I haven't watched in a long time. Bernard says, I heard dice. Well, I'm in Nevada. Oh, sure, you can roll a 7 every time with 1 die, right? Oh, yeah. Certainly in D6 games, you often get +1 or +2, apparently, so you can add a couple of extra spots on. That movie is 30 years old. No, I'm getting old, Norm. Hi from across the pond. Hi, Russ, rocking at O and HO trains and stuff. Nice to have you with us. So, Bernard, I've got to stop and bring this up on the big screen. Be right back. Okay. Yeah, I will be doing the actual short version video with a voiceover explaining what I'm doing. But sometimes I cut out some of the mistakes, just for, not because I don't want people to know about the mistakes, but just because of speed, really. You end up trying to cut it down a lot, sadly. Scary how time flies. Indeed. We're all getting old. Right. Get Kathy's book, says Digger, and he's put a link. That's the UK link. But you can get it from Model Railroad books in the US and Amazon. It's on Amazon. Crabs have 8 legs and 2 pincers. Thanks, Tamsin. So instead of having 8 legs, this is spiders with pincers. But they're sci-fi scrap spiders, so they are actually crabs. But they're called scrap spiders because it's alliterative. Edscar. So crabs, they are crustaceans that belong to the order decapods, which means 10-footed. Oh, right. I didn't do invertebrates. I did vertebrates and plants at uni as my 2 specialists. So I didn't really look at invertebrates much. But yeah, I like crab. Steamed crab, that is. So, is that Joel Mercier? Hi, the rusty effect you can achieve is amazing. So difficult for me, but maybe my first layer is already too dark and so it gets difficult to make it lighter. Ends up too orange. I think the trick here is I'm actually putting quite a lot of very thick enamel washes on. So I've started with a dark brown here and I am putting these on. And these are crusted rust deposits, so they're drying a lot lighter than that looks there. And when it's dried, it's way lighter. And that was confusing me at first. If you look on those doors and hubs, the hatch covers, you can see there. That's how light that one that's going on here now came out. Actually, that's not that one. But you can see there is some of that one on there. That's how light it came out. It was really light. I think if I'd made it thicker, it would have come out more orange. But they just dried too light. It was a real problem I had. Digger, I love creating rusty stuff. I do as well. I didn't really use many pigments except to take the shine off the floors of the scrap corridors where I'd sloshed on the enamel. And yeah, it is really good. It's just a great effect. I have a thought that perhaps Star Wars doesn't really have many iron things. Things tend not to rust as much in Star Wars. They tend to corrode. But I decided I was going full rust for this because I wanted it to stand out visually against the sewers, which are very much in browns. But I wanted these to be warm browns and the sewers to be cooler tones. So the streaking is a greeny tone, brown. The brown is warmer, but there's not as much of it. The brown on the outside is a cooler brown. So very much this was to be separate. And if you look at all of those standing up on the back, to make sure they dried the earth into the cracks. I actually got them all standing on one. I did the 2 sides, but standing that way around to hope it would settle in the cracks more. So that's how that dried. That is what a crusted rust deposit light looks like. Look how light that is. And then there's also some of the darker one in there. And the actual dark rust streaks ended up being really quite shiny in places, which is fine. It's a rust heap. There'll be damp stuff on there as well. But I wanted to not just have it so tonal. It just looks all the same. And the point of a rust heap, junk heap, is that some stuff won't have rusted as much. So I'm going through with a really battered old brush, of which I have thousands. I really trashed my brushes. Just putting on, this is ivory, it isn't white, so it's slightly warmed up white. I'm going to go over it with a black wash later to tone it down a bit. And I'm going through, I do that, I do a pale blue and I do a pale green. And I put it through and I just randomly pick bits. I also put a black wash on. It's a Vallejo black wash. Acrylic, because at this point I'm now doing acrylics. This is thicker, so it's staying all right. It's not like a wash. And actually that black wash was really good. It dried a bit funny in 1 or 2 places, but as washes go, it worked really well. But I wouldn't normally buy a small bottle of black wash, but I bought it for some reason. And I used it on a few things in the end, as a paint almost, just to tone the dark down a bit. Okay, where was I? Norm. What is the big boxy piece? Looks like a trash compactor. Norm, it's a trash compactor. Good spot. Yeah, it is a trash compactor, dare I say it. It really bugged me. The first one worked really well, but it printed in the wrong orientation for this. And these are all set to print in the direction they are now. And I put it on its back to print and it didn't print well. Some of the uprights were too upright. And rather than change this, it's 2 halves of this, or 2 parts of this. I changed the bump so it's got a cutout of the rust pile that's on top. And I didn't notice until I came to take the photo yesterday that my cutout isn't big enough in the top for it to sit. So my rail is too thick. So actually all my rust sits a mil off the ground, which I think is to do with bridging. There's enough gap, but it's to do with the bridging of these at 0.08 isn't very good. It's got thick bridges on, so it just sagged a bit. So I actually need to adjust that on the final piece, which I will do. That's why you test print. But I'm just annoyed I hadn't noticed it because the first one fit perfectly. And then I just did the change and printed, and I was in a mad print rush and didn't really notice, which is, you often notice things when you paint it, which is why I like to paint my models, because I spot the flaws more when I'm spending more time painting. Yeah, I agree. Monique says dry rust is more orange. This dried a lot lighter than I expected it. I do like it, and you do occasionally get rust this colour, very occasionally. But it's where the water's like puddled and it's dried off, and it was too much. By the end, this is toned down quite a bit. Doug, supported clips joining the crab pieces, will they be interchangeable? So they're actually mini clips, which are pre-supported clips. They're my version. They're a 60% open lock clip. Yeah, so you can swap them. You could put any of them. There are, at the moment, there are tiny, small, medium, large, and mega. I have actually only used one of the large. Most of the stuff's too small for the large. There's nothing really for the large or mega. And so the mega is a stretch goal. The large and the mega are a stretch goal. So the mega, which you probably will see more when I get to the trash crab bit in a moment, but the mega is quite big. You know, it's this sort of size. So it's going to have a veritable smorgasbord of a rust heap, but bigger than this on top. So yeah. So Monique says, so your heap looks good to me. Thank you. It's Bernard says, Ed Scar and Tamsin, aren't they also somehow related to the butter family? Maybe. This light coloured pieces are probably aluminium, which does not rust. I actually do come through and put some metal on in a minute as well, which allow. But I think some of them will be plastic, or some of them will be rusted, but it hasn't come off. So this is me doing the trash crabs. I need to get this ordered a little bit better, I think. I'm going to split the trash crabs out, but I'll do that narratively when I do the main video. I did try and do it very quickly. I took all the tops and tails of me wobbling it. I'm just going through here adding, and I think the trash crabs were looking very samey. They had the red base rather than the brown base because I'd run out of the brown base for most of them. So some of them have got, I've left the crabs the colour they are. I've not done a lot with them. So they've got this really light thing. The crabs are mechanical, where they're not real crabs or spiders. Though I think we've decided that the scrap spiders for advertising purposes only. So yeah. So when a scrap pile transpires itself into a work of art, yeah, it's. I think scrap is beautiful, but I wouldn't want it in my garden. Let's put it that way. Aluminium oxidizes to grey dust. That's a good point. You get that kind of galvanised look as well. So anyway, on here there's a lot of peeling paint, which is very badly splodged on and works very much as a distance thing. And the fact that I'm doing a lot. Now, I think what this says is, people say to me, oh, I couldn't paint that. And my answer is, it's just splodged on. They go, oh yeah, but you splodged it so well. And the answer is, not really on this. If you feel like I couldn't do this, you need a rough brush. Any of my brushes end up like that within a few weeks, especially if you're going to dab them up and down. But the idea is layers. The more layers you put on, the less any one thing stands out. So if one bit looks a bit khaki, go over it, tone it down with a wash. None of these ended up without something. White itself is too stark. You know, it will be in a rust pile. It will have rust streaks on it from other stuff. It will have darkness. You need to go through and do just a few randomly. I also dotted. So when I first did the junk pile, I spent a week practicing with Blender, dropping stuff to try and make a junk pile. It never worked. It didn't get close enough. And if it did, it just crashed my Mac. It couldn't cope with it. because these are proper STLs, so some of them are quite big. They're not like low poly models. So what happened, and they were intersecting all the time. So what happened was I ended up manually arranging them all around, and to arrange them onto something, I made a junk heap with a junk texture that I got off online somewhere, with free junk texture, which had loads of pipes and stuff in it. So there's a load of detail all the way through this. There's also a lot of cables I added. So there's huge amounts. There's a lot of droid feet sticking out, droid heads, just loads and loads and loads of features in there to go and pick out and paint if you want to. So this is the opportunity to bring some of those out. Yeah, and copper goes green. Yeah, we all know what copper roofs look like. Verdigris. It's even got its own name. Norm says lurkers are welcome. What I haven't painted, silver oxidizes to black. Yeah, there's some black goes on there, which could be paint, could just be something. And Doug says aluminium oxide seals around the raw aluminium and stops further corrosion. Iron oxide flakes away, exposing more iron to oxidize further. That's a good point. That is a good point. If you've got any bad prints where it looks a bit khaki, that's just your iron oxidizing. Honestly, it really is. So on this, you'll see me doing this for a while. I actually ended up with 3 trash compactors. One of them is the original, which sits a lot better than the other 2. And I could reprint the bottom and repaint it. I may or may not, probably. But I've got 3 trash compactors now. Because I did 1 test print, got it all finished, and then got confused about what I printed and put the same test print on the second printer, and they went on at the same time. And I was like, I've now got 4 rubbish piles. I may as well just print the extra exterior so it actually has somewhere to go, because the rubbish piles are, long prints. So I ended up printing an extra one. So I ended up with 3 rather than 2. But odd numbers are always better. So there's 3 trash compactors, which is always fun. This is the blue, and I'm using pale blues because obviously paint fades, and I'm trying to show this is basically how bad that brush has got. It wasn't as bad as that when I started the session, but it's really bad. But big lumpy clumpy brushes that have gone horrible and curled, they're brilliant for stuff like this, just splodging it on, because you can't get it anywhere you want it to, so it's going to look very random. So besides the big scrap piles, I've also got junk piles. Some of them are on the conveyor belts because the tunnels are a conveyor system. One of the stretch goals is going to be a standalone conveyor system. I've also got just 3 junk piles, and I made a junk pile with Patreon to show how I make junk piles and how to remesh. Was it that one? Did I do it to show how to remesh, or just how to do a junk pile? But anyway, I did the junk piles, so you can get the files for those if you're a paid Patreon member. And it's one reason that I wanted to remesh as well is if I had just left it as all of the original models with the junk pile around it, anybody could have got any one of those original models out. So you would have had all my droids, everything I've created. I did do some special just shapes, really, cylinders, but you'd have got almost everything out, maybe in the wrong size because a lot of stuff had been shrunk and moved, but you'd have got everything out of that pile. I was like, seems a bit of a way to just give away all your models. So was relieved to remesh it. I did put 1 or 2 bits of pigment on where it looked right at the end, off camera actually, right today, just to tone down some of it a little bit more. But some of that, I'm like, why did I paint the bottom of the tank? So these were looking a bit wrong. They're the conveyor belts and they're rusty, but I wasn't very happy with them. So I put this black wash on. Today, and it's on a future video, so I can't show it you, I put on a dark track rust, which is like a very reddy brown. And it mostly covers them, but it's more polished in the middle. So you start to see the black come through as if it's more worn there. And it's grotty around the edge. And I haven't sealed it because these are going to be dioramas. If you were playing with this, you would want to seal it. And sealing it, I would use a matte varnish. And it would probably get rid of some of the shine in the centre. But it would work well. And you could just spray a matte varnish on. I would probably airbrush because it's quicker and doesn't disturb the pigment as much. But because if you brush it, you can end up dissolving the pigment. So you want to spray it, but you can use a rattle can one as well for terrain. It's never normally a problem. So Monique, okay team, got to go. Have a great week all. Your models are looking great, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you so much, Monique. Have a good week. And we'll see you next time. Or when you're next on Discord. Monique does a lot of classic trains, so always worth, she checks, checking out what she's posting on Discord. I have a cup of cold tea to drink. I feel like I could go a bit further on the scrap. The tunnel, I've got a tunnel and I've got some corridors and you can see the hoppers there. And I feel like the standalone conveyor belt will be a good option to go with this. I feel at the moment there's like, that's missing. So I'm going to make a standalone conveyor belt, but I'm going to make it hopefully that it will also slide into the tunnel, so you can put it in the tunnel if you want. And there's tops with belts, holes with belts and holes without belts. And the holes with belts, these will just slot together. I haven't actually clipped any of mine. They just slot together. But I made a fatal error, which you may or may not notice, that I did all of these at 75.2 because I forgot what 3 inches was in metric for some reason. So they're all a millimetre shorter than my other 3-inch stuff, which does add up with the amount of stuff that I've got. But none of these are long enough that it's an issue. But anyway, these just will all go together and those conveyor belt ends intersect. So whichever order you put them in, they go. But I would like to have them slot into a standalone conveyor belt, as I said. So you could just have that and it would show this off a bit better. I feel that a tunnel is great for an RPG. It controls you. And you've got to jump over all the junk, which is hard work. So, you can have if you're into RPGs and you roll, I guess you could fail your roll and take a wound from falling over a nasty piece of grotty junk. I'm trying to think of this, even though I don't play RPGs, as this is very much more an RPG style. I'm trying to think of it as encounters and challenges and things like that. And I'm sure I'm getting the wording wrong, but I'm trying to think of it in a way that encourages, there are events that you could meet. So space rat or, holes. There's a lot of holes in the sewers, in the ceilings, if you're putting roofs on, or you could just put a roof on one area if you want access. In the floor, which you can have grates in or out, grates which you could then cut a hole in. What I haven't done is any height on it yet, so you can't go from one to the other. I mean, you could just stack them up. There's nothing to stop you stacking. And it was a suggestion, one of the stretch goals, especially on the vents and stuff like that, could be height. So I may have a play with height so that you can have bridges over and other ways in than just walking in the ends. But I need to think about that a bit. Right. Russ says, bulk weathering looks efficient in your video. It does, and it's not sped up a huge amount. I mean, it is obviously sped up. I don't work at this, but because I'm painting several hundred models, I mean, I test printed every sewer, and there's at least 100 different iterations, and then I printed extras of the straights so I could put more together. So I printed a few extra curves and T's and stuff. So I know there's well over 100 just bases. I'm now going to reprint 100. It takes a day and 3 hours because I keep slowing it down trying to get rid of this ridged on the side, which was really bad on the Trailblazer, and I didn't spot it because it generally is underneath. This is blackwash going on. It's the Vallejo blackwash, which I'm diluting with water. But yeah, it's going to be a lot, and I've got to do all this again then. Ben says, I am second instinct. I'm impressed what a jack of all trades you are, Kathy. These look great. Looking forward to supporting you again. Thanks, Ben. Looking forward to you supporting me. I actually, I'm looking forward to supporting you for the Nidhogg and Aesir feet, even if I may never print them. But there we go. As an aside, I'm also for Scut City, as we're going to call it now, not Drink Room City, Scut City. It's been in a few previous live streams, so it's the big frame, plywood shelves, everything 3D printed to cover it. I'm using Gridforge for the base, the floors, because I need to put the floors in so I can put the walls in, and I need to make them interchangeable because I haven't decided what's going there yet. And I actually have quite a lot of sci-fi tiles I designed for my first Kickstarter, which I've now put into this Gridforge system, which John developed with Ben for their Frontier that only just finished. You can go check it out. It's on a late pledge or whatever they call it in Frontiers on My Mini Factory. And basically, I showed it you last time, I think. I actually have one on my side here. This is a Gridforge base, and this is number 3, if you can see that. And number 3 is a certain sizing. There's 6 tolerance fits. So you should be able to do that if you want on number 3 with a P1S. But if you want it really sloppy, you go for 0. If you want it tight, you go for 6. And then there's a tile template. And these 2 sets of tiles, the bases and the tops, are all free license from Ben. And he's encouraging other people to put their tops on. So I still need to test print them, but I've been putting my old modular landing pads, which are currently on OpenLock, onto Gridforge. And I'm going to use it to do all of my existing tiles. Not all my campaigns have things that are tileable, but I'd already got all these carefully put together as OpenLock complete, so I can swap them easily enough onto Gridforge. And I will be putting them on. But I don't want to decide yet for future floors of my Junk Room City what it's going to be. So this enables me to put a base on and then clip the walls to it, and they use something called supporty clips, and you can clip them into OpenLock clips. There's supporty to OpenLock conversions, and I'll be able to go through and decide. I don't know what I'm doing with the walls yet. I'm going to chat to John when I want to get to walls, Ben, because I do need a swappable wall system, because again I won't be deciding, but I need to block the light sooner rather than later, and I don't want to just put card up. So anyway, Gridforge, great system. Ben's got loads of sci-fi tiles, so if you want to do sci-fi tiles, all of his existing ships have been, not his actual ships have been converted, but some of his existing ships have been converted, and a lot of his tiles are being converted either by people doing them or by Ben as part of that Frontier. And one guy's, it was Sugar, wasn't it, has done a build guide using it for a whole laboratory ship, which is actually a circular ship like this. It's a ring ship, which you couldn't possibly model, but he'd done it as big long sections, and he's got a whole build guide that's on Drive-Thru RPG, I think. The Calendula, he called it. So you can go and check that out. But anyway, it's a very nice system. So when I'm not printing tops for sewers, I've been printing Gridforge bases for my, 2 metre by, I don't know, it's like 8 foot by 8 foot square housing city unit. Polite, by the way, I know aluminium oxide, Al2O3, as an abrasive and polishing agent in red, pink, white and corundum and polishing white. I have corundum. I used it as a texture finish for tarmac once. Doug Jeffries, nothing wrong with that terminology. Random encounter, wandering monster. Brilliant. Well, there's going to be a few monsters for you to encounter. The junk piles are more for flavour. One of the stretch goals I want to do is falling rubbish. So I'm going to put them, this is for me, but it's going to end up as a stretch goal, or it's going to get done anyway. I'm going to put them on a fishing line, so they're going to basically have junk with a hole through the middle. And so you can hang up your fishing lines of hanging rubbish, which you have to glue on, which I'll test to see whether it glues to fishing line. And you can hang it up and let them sort of drop down. And these are the eyes. I don't show you the second half of the eyes because I did that today. This is a silver speed paint. You could use something like a monochrome pen if you wanted. And today I put on Tamiya gloss, clear, transparent red. So the silver still shows through. And they're just currently drying. So where are we? Very true, Ralph says. Digger, That pile of scrap is looking fantastic, says Digger. Thank you very much. Norm says these are really an amazing array of pieces. Thanks, Norm. Stating the obvious. Nerdforge, YouTube, just did a 7-foot long book nook. Spoiler, it goes around corners. The sewer pipe would be an interesting in viewed from one end format. I agree, and on my Junk Room City, Scut City as it is now, I'll be able to make one that's 3 foot deep. So you'll be able to look down 3 foot, and that's why I want to light it, but I need to do the lids for it. And you won't really use lids on a tabletop, so they're all designed, and actually I've used some of them as bases because they look the same. Especially now I've painted them as if the bottoms, I did get a bit confused about what tops and bottoms. It's easy on my Sci-Fi to tell, but on the weathered one, I just use a textured sheet to give the pattern. But there we go. But that would be really good. Yeah, Nerdforge do some really interesting stuff. Doug, Kathy, when will you be selling off your Gridforge tiles? Well, I've been doing them of an evening, but I've got a bit distracted by doing the stretch goals for this. Oh, and there we end. So I will get this live before I look at it, and then it depends how the stretch goals are going on this as to whether I need to spend time modelling on them, whether it does well or not. But Doug says Gridforge conveyor belts. I could do Gridforge conveyor belts. I was just going to do them with an open lock clip. So yeah, I could do them with Gridforge, but I want clean edges? They can have holes in the edges, can't they? I'm just thinking the trouble with that, and the reason my face is looking like this is the base of it is 3 inches, and the Gridforge would be 3 inches, and 2 inches would look odd. So my conveyor belts themselves are just under 3 inches. So I would have a set that, yeah, I'll think about it, Doug, but yes. I'm going to have to look through all this chat. So what did I have to do? We've got turtles. We've got something else that was really good that I thought, oh, I must do that. And then, yes, Gridforge on the conveyor belts. So the answer is the tiles will come out when I've got this live. They'll just go straight into my mini factory because you can already get them as open lock clip ones there. So it will be a Gridforge. Second Dynasty, everybody is asking for walls now. I spoke to John about it straight away almost for Junk Room City, which is a lot taller than any walls you would be going. And he said you weren't looking at it this year because you were kind of mapped out. So yes. So Doug, yes, he says it's Shergill's lab ship, Calendula. It's really cool. And Ben from Second Dynasty says Shergill is MVP. So much stuff. He is. I'm trying to think what MVP, most valued player? Yeah, it's a football thing, isn't it? Doug, John hates the idea of adding walls to Gridforge. That's not what it's for. I get that, but what I'm looking for is a similar system because I'm just going to do the edges. I'm doing a 3D print box, so I just want to box in my diorama. And I want to make the decision about what's going on the walls after I make the decision about, yeah. So anyway, the Gridforge are going to go down, and I can always nail clip into it, though I can actually probably get in on some of the easy ones. But they have these like nail clips where you can put from the inside into a wall, so you can clip your Gridforge clips into an existing wall, which is how Ben's doing his spaceships. You tweak it together. It's almost like a pull, you tweak it like that and push it in, and it will go through. So that's pretty cool. I get why John doesn't want to do walls, but I think you produce a product and people run with it. Russ is rocking O and HO train stuff. I don't own a 3D printer myself, but I've been buying many 3D printed items online on eBay in the last year. I'm amazed at the level of detail. Ooh, now it's full size. That is my rat in FDM. That is an FDM rat. Oops. Tail's that side. So, that is, you have to get a hand up here to get it to focus. I'm amazed at the quality. I'll put some better photos up once I've painted him tomorrow. Yeah, it's very true. I prefer FDM to resin. I would always try and do something in FDM first, but miniatures have to be in resin really. FDM's not quite there yet. And partly because of the supporting. But yeah, Russ, you're right. And Norm agrees. Tamsin, red eyes on robots to show they're evil. They are red. They are definitely glowing red eyes. Doug says, surprisingly cheap, Russ's. You can get a decent printer for about 300 and then just pay materials costs about £10 a kilo. The Minot guano effect. Oh yes, Tamsin. That was the other one. Something to do with guano. I need to go and look what a Minot looks like. I could think what a hawk bat looks like, but I need to go and look what a Minot looks like. So anyway, we've got a few things. Thankfully, chat is here forever. Seeing the Nerdforge mirror bendy book nook, I realised I have a tall area on a bookcase in my house, so I could have a view mirror downwards, so to appear flat, the floor would be on the wall. Okay, I haven't seen the Nerdforge one. I'll go and have a look. I was wondering before I saw that even about doing mirror to go at the end. The trouble is, if you look down, you'd see it, so you then have to slant them so you can't see it. And I could have it at 45 degrees, was then my thought. I bought round mirrors anyway that would fit in my round sewer. But what it would be is effectively a 45 degree, I guess, one. And I would have to look at how you angle it. So that's definitely something I was thinking about doing. So mirrors is another one. And I need to definitely work that out. So there's loads and loads of ideas coming out here, which is really good. Stretch goals I often struggle with. I mean, LED tops doesn't sound that exciting, but there's a whole set of those, which I will hopefully get around to having at least. I was going to actually get one out and practice with it this afternoon, but I forgot I had a friend's birthday party. I didn't forget I had my friend's birthday party. I forgot it was 2 o'clock. I thought it was 3 o'clock, so I was an hour late. Anyway, there we go. That's a very nice rat, says Norm. Thank you. Tamsin, Ratty looks cool. Now you just need to do badger and mole. Yay. They're very big as well. Doug says, Ian, Dragon's Rest, makes the nail clips for Gridforge. Amazing how well the community works together. I think I really like it as a community. Minot from Empire is the asteroid. Looks like a bat with a lamprey mouth. That's the one. Thank you. Thank you. I knew. Yeah. Ooh, that's quite scary. Hawk bats are something in the bottom of Coruscant. They're one of the few native species left on Coruscant. They sort of moved into the city. And then Edsgar, but they're not in canon, I don't think. Edsgar, the common way isn't 45 degrees, but much shallower. If you just have it enough that you can't see your own face, but you see the wall, it makes it look much longer, as if you're seeing the wall twice. Yes, and that's what I need to play with angles, because I suspect it will depend very much on how long your wall is as to what angle your mirror can be. My mirror could probably, because it's going to be 3 foot deep, could be a lot longer. My angle could be a lot different. So I need to have a bit of a play with it and work it out, I think. Anyway, I bought round mirrors. You could use square mirrors or whatever. I bought round mirrors to have a play. And I was thinking it would be useful. I mean, I have got curves and things that go there. And they were a pain to do because they're like a proper sort of circle. I was going to do a lot more different types, but in the end, they might get to stretch goals. But I was thinking, I've got a service tunnel, which is the first stretch goal, which is going to link the rubbish and the sewers to outside through a sort of higher side hatch. It'll just clip into a T or a straight. So it'll clip into the existing one and it'll be a sort of higher hatch. And the service tunnel is just loads of pipe wires sort of going like this. And they're really just a way of having something slightly different. They're only going to be straights and joiners really. But what I wanted to put into it, and I thought it was easier to put it into a service tunnel than it was to put it into anything else, was the vents. So my vents are about this high. They only just fit a Mini. And if you've got a really tall based Mini, you're going to struggle. If he's pointing up a lot, you're going to struggle. He's going to have to at the side. But the point of the kind of those sewers is that they feel cramped. And they're slightly bendy. And I haven't got those out anyway yet because they're getting a quick black grime sort of airbrush perhaps tomorrow. And I've been putting off the airbrushing because I've had stuff on today and I was still finishing other things and bits and bobs. So I've been putting off doing the airbrushing. I really hate airbrushing, so I put it off. So anyway, we're getting near the end. Stating says micro LED Christmas lights would look good strung along the pipe walls. Copper wire would be in scale too. That's a good idea. That is a good idea. I mean, I've got LED tops, which are basically a hole. There's about 5 holes in each top. And the idea was that they would line up with the LEDs on a standard 60 per metre strip. But you can't do that because they're not on mine are on an imperial grid and they're on a metric grid and they never line up. So what I'll end up with is lights every now and then coming through. And then there's a holder over the top. But I've took them into the other room. I'm using the clips that you use to make LEDs, do the T's. So I'm not actually going to solder them. I'm going to try and just do them with the tips. But lighting, it's going to be another video. I'm going to be lighting my sewer scene and putting it into Junk Room City is going to be another video. And I probably just need to put some card or something around the back at the moment to hide the light coming through from behind, or turn all the other lights off in the room or something, so that the lights in the sewers are the only lights. So that's it. Anyway, with only a couple of minutes left to go, and thankfully I've now been putting the videos on my hard drive so I don't end up halfway through a video and discover it's 10 o'clock. It is time to wrap it up and say thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I really would love it if you went and signed up on the link which is pinned at the top of chat. Go and find it. There will be a video out showing more about the grunge. If you've got any questions, Discord is the best place to find me to chat, but you can get me on Instagram or Facebook page if you message me through that. I don't really do the personal one at all. So yeah, have a good week. Thank you for coming, and let me just check, because I saw a number of chats come up. When I get around to my cyberpunk sci-fi terrain, says Ed, I'll have a power station building with a hidden USB. Then each building has sub-cable hidden, as in scale power line or water pipe. Yeah, mine are all going to be USB'd from the back, and I'm trying to keep to a USB standard. So yeah. Ben says, thanks, Kathy, have a good one. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for this, and I will see you all in a month's time when we will be talking about something completely different, hopefully. Ben's going back to his renders. Norm's going back to Palm Springs, so that's good. Glad you all loved it. Take care, and I'll see you next time.